everyone. This is Kate Lipper-Garabedian. Thank you for joining me for another Conversations with Kate podcast. I'm glad today to be joined by Claire Teylouni, who is the Director of Government Affairs for Reproductive Equality Now. REN is advancing reproductive justice and working to eliminate barriers to safe legal abortion. And so this is an incredibly timely conversation in light of the devastating development of a leaked Supreme Court decision that would effectively overturn Roe versus Wade. Thank you so much for joining me today, Claire.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be with you.
Yes. So not surprisingly, you all put out a really strong statement immediately following the Supreme Court Justice, the leaked draft. And I just want to read a couple components of it. And then shortly thereafter, my office, I also spoke out with concern about this development. So your executive director, Rebecca Hart-Holder, wrote, "While not yet final, this is a heartbreaking moment for people across the nation who believe in gender equality and the right to access an abortion. And unfortunately, this decision is just the beginning of the far right's crusade to erode our most personal and private rights. We are stunned, but we are resolved. Regardless of the official decision issued in Dobbs versus Jackson, we will never stop fighting for the right to make deeply personal decisions about when and whether to become a parent. If you believe in abortion rights and reproductive equity for all, we need you in this fight with us today." And likewise, some of my statement, just to read, is, "I want to unequivocally reaffirm my support for a woman's right to choose. As a practical matter, this ruling would undermine the agency, health, and safety of millions of women nationwide. To be clear, a ruling of this nature will not prevent abortions. It will only prevent safe abortions. And the impact will not be realized equally. Access to abortion services will continue to differ across socioeconomic, geographic, racial, and other lines. Those without access will be forced to resort to life-threatening alternatives. While Massachusetts' residents' reproductive rights will remain intact even if Roe is overturned, the same will not be true for residents in half the country. This is not a time for complacency. I urge you to mobilize now in support of pro-choice candidates up and down the ballot at the local, state, and federal levels. I also urge you to consider donating to abortionfunds.org in order to help remove financial and logistical barriers to access." So very much aligned with your concerns and also your call to action. And so I'm very grateful for an opportunity to share with listeners some ideas for ways we can take action now and as soon as the Supreme Court decision, the final decision, is published. So do you want to just quickly let us know who you are and a little bit more about the organization, and then we'll turn to some next steps?
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, my name is Claire Teylouni. I am the Director of Government Affairs for Reproductive Equity Now. I want to just reiterate, and you mentioned this in your statement, and Rebecca did in hers as well. It's really important to name that nothing about federal abortion protections have changed with this leaked draft, right? It's a draft. But we know that when the final decision is issued, it's very clear that the Supreme Court is poised to overturn 50 years of precedent and overturn the federal constitutional abortion protections that have been enshrined in Roe v. Wade. The second piece of that, as you also said, is that it's also important to name that abortion is legal in Massachusetts and will remain legal regardless of what the Supreme Court when it makes its final decision.
Right.
So thanks to the Roe Act, which you voted for, we have statutory protections here in the Commonwealth to the right to an abortion. What I think it's really important to talk about, and what we've been focusing on, is that a right to an abortion is really a right in name only if there are too many barriers to access that stand in the way. And it's access to abortion, even in a state like Massachusetts, that's not guaranteed. So as an organization, we are focusing both our legislative priorities and our research and educational efforts on breaking down those barriers to accessing abortion and the full range of reproductive health care.
Thank you. And, I was mindful of that, the practical reality, even where legal, there may still be effectively something of a ban depending, on the state in which you live, or even here in terms of geographic access. And so you're right, there are bills pending right now in the legislature to continue to ensure that people have agency in their reproductive health care choices. You also, I'm sure, know that the House budget that was released before this opinion leaked included $500,000 for expanding abortion access. And then the Senate, now with the recognition of what is likely coming from the Supreme Court has increased that in their Ways and Means proposal to $2 million. So there's definitely a lot of advocacy and support at the state level here in Massachusetts.
Absolutely. And I was going to talk about that. This is really important. Abortion care is costly, right? Just as you named. And so are the logistics that kind of surround it, whether you have to travel far to get to a clinic, or if you need childcare, if you have to miss a shift of work, if you're paying out of pocket, or in Massachusetts, tons of people are on high deductible health insurance plans. So those costs add up. And abortion funds are the grassroots organizations that have decades of experience putting that affordable abortion care within reach. And so this funding that the House has already taken action on is really, really important. And it will be an immediate influx of funds to make sure that abortion care remains accessible in the state. And as you said, we're focused on the Senate budget right now, and we'll soon turn to making sure that Governor Baker signs that budget when it gets to his desk.
Right. And I think I even saw that he signaled sort of a willingness and an interest in supporting this, right?
Yes.
So that's great.
We were really pleased to see that.
That's really great. So you're working on advocacy at the state level around funding to support access. Obviously, you're standing by with, in this interim before the decision is final. Are there things that, you and like-minded organizations are focusing on right now in terms of just supporting reproductive justice?
Yeah, well, I mentioned that our legislative priorities are really focused on expanding access to abortion care and reproductive health care more broadly. We think that's really important. We have been working pretty much nonstop since the leak last week. We work really closely in coalition with our partners at the ACLU and Planned Parenthood of Massachusetts.
Yep.
So we've been working pretty much nonstop to solidify a slate of recommendations. And just this morning, we launched a brand new agenda, the Beyond Roe agenda, that is a slate of policy recommendations for action that state leaders can take, both on the short term and in the longer term, to make sure that we're paving the way for abortion access and reproductive health care access more broadly in Massachusetts.
Got it.
So,
is that the kind of agenda that also would be applicable in other states, or is it very much tailored toward a state that already has fairly robust legal protections?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly hope that it can be a model for other states to take action as well. We also, I think, collaborated with other states that are on the forefront of this issue. There are a lot of good ideas out there, and why reinvent the wheel,
Sure.
right? When folks that are experts have good ideas. But absolutely, I think it's really important for states like Massachusetts that have strong legal protections to, as I said, shift our focus to access and do make sure that access is in reality available to everybody who chooses it.
Great. So I think we've talked about in this moment in time what advocacy organizations like yours can be working on, and how state policymakers like me can take that those recommendations and consider ways in which both to enhance funding and then to address any perhaps barriers within, statute or regulation. What about people who are listening, just people in the community who are concerned about what this will mean for people not only in Massachusetts but elsewhere? Are there things that we can be doing now to mobilize and to support reproductive justice?
Absolutely. You read Rebecca's statement where we said we need everyone in this fight, and now's the time to get involved. There are so many ways that people can go about doing that. First, I'd say, and you mentioned this, one of the most important ways that you can be helping people access abortion care right now is by supporting abortion funds. If you have the means to make a donation. There are several here in Massachusetts that are, again, the experienced organizations helping people afford the care that they choose. And the National Network of Abortion Funds has a really great website where you can kind of learn more about the funds and learn what funds exist all across the country.
Great.
Secondly, I'll make a plug. We really hope that folks will sign up to volunteer with organizations like Reproductive Equity Now. We are a small but mighty organization. We're on the ground building power and support for the reproductive equity movement at the grassroots level, and we really hope that folks join us. And then thirdly, I talked about this Beyond Roe agenda. I would say that we really hope, if you're a policy wonk like me, aside from donating if you have the means, aside from volunteering your time and learning how to lobby legislators, I hope that you'll go to massbeyondroe.org, check out our policy agenda. Even if you just want to learn more about the reproductive issues that are equity issues that are out there, I encourage folks to visit the website. There's also an option to kind of co-sign your name and stand with us in this call to action.
That's great. Massbeyondroe.org.
Yep.
Okay, very good. And then we anticipate the Supreme Court sessions end in June, and that's when they release decisions. There's no reason to think that the ultimate result in this case has sort of been established from the draft. It's possible maybe that some of the dicta that was just so alarming to folks could be adjusted a little as a draft, but I would assume that we know what the result is likely to be. Any sense at this point, sort of other ways in which you'll be leaning on that once the legal framework is different for many other states around the country?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think we don't know exactly what the final decision will be, right? But we know that if either they fully overturn Roe v. Wade, or they don't explicitly overturn it, but they still uphold the 15-week ban that's in question before the court right now. There are 26 states in the country that are poised to either overnight or in very short term completely ban abortion or severely restrict it. And we don't know it's impossible to guess what that impact will have on the states that are protecting access to abortion, but we know that it's going to mean increased demand. That means increased demand for our abortion funds, for our clinics, and for our providers. And so this focus and strategy on improving access is really, really important. And so this list of policy recommendations on our Beyond Roe agenda really includes things like improving access to the full spectrum of reproductive health care, like improving access and making sure there's affordable or no cost access to emergency contraception, improving equitable access to all forms of pregnancy care, making sure people aren't paying too much or avoiding care because of the need to pay too much for prenatal care, for childbirth. And
I would love to add childcare to that list, though.
Yes, right? Absolutely. Yes. When it really is a reproductive equity issue, right? We can't be talking about the costs that people are taking on when choosing whether or not to parent if we're also not talking about the costs of parents who want to parent with dignity, right? That means being able to afford childcare.
And a safe and quality location. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really think that this focus on access and strategy of improving access will be incredibly important, even as we see the many, many ways in which our state will be impacted, and more details I'm sure we'll have on that to come once the final decision is issued. Right. And when we see exactly what the impact providers in our state are having. But we know that providers are already treating patients from Texas. We know that people are coming here, whether they have friends, peer connections with family in some way, or a cheap plane ticket to Boston, right? Right. So we know that there will be increased demand in Massachusetts, and we want to make sure our providers are protected, patients are protected, clinics have the resources they need to either expand or improve their security protocols or improve their telehealth services, what have you. There's so many reinforcements that we can make sure that we're offering to make sure, again, that Massachusetts is this beacon of reproductive healthcare access.
Well, that's great. It's reassuring to hear about the good work that's going on among the coalition, and also knowing that you have strong partners in the state legislature and the state government here, so that not only will we be, primed to spring into action when the decision is final, we already, with a sense of the draft, are moving quickly to think those things through. And I've heard from some constituents who want to know, what are we going to do at the state level? And I hope everything's on the table. And I've seen other states, legislating in this area. I look forward to looking more at the Beyond Roe agenda to sort of see what your policy recommendations look like and how I can be supportive. And I'm glad also to be able to share with listeners ways that they can get involved right now. Obviously, being in touch
Yeah.
with me is great. They should feel confident that they have, someone who is unequivocally supportive of reproductive health care access, abortion access, representing them, and they can look for opportunities to volunteer with you, with other organizations, to think about donating as they are able in this space, and then getting involved, in some of the advocacy, including in other states perhaps, or supporting pro-choice candidates in other places.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Anything else you'd want to leave listeners with?
I think that it's been a heavy couple of weeks, right? And I think, at least from my perspective, I don't know that I've fully processed the ramifications of the leak, of what it will mean for our country, what it means as a woman, what it means for gender equity in our country. And I am just, I think it's it's an important moment to get involved, whether you've been involved from the very beginning or you're just learning about why this issue is important to you, or you've never thought about it before. We need everyone. We've talked about this. We need everyone in this fight. And access to abortion and access to reproductive health care affects every person in some way. And so we really, really hope that everybody will think about how it does affect them and what's the way that works for them to get involved in this movement.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for being with me today and talking with me about the leadership that Reproductive Equity Now is taking on in this time. I'm glad to be working with you and glad to be able to share out some information about what people can be doing right now.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to Conversations with Kate.